I met Caroline at a friend's engagement party in the spring of 2011. It was one of those upscale gatherings where the wine flowed too early and the speeches stretched too long. She was standing near the back patio, half listening to the maid of honor's toast, sipping white wine and smiling at something no one else seemed to notice. I remember watching her for a while before I introduced myself. Not because I was shy, but because she had the kind of quiet confidence that made you second-guess whether you were worth her time. She wore a pale blue dress, simple and elegant, and her hair was pulled back like she hadn't thought too much about it but had somehow gotten it exactly right. We ended up talking for an hour before either of us realized the party had moved inside. There was no grand, cinematic moment, just a calm, uninterrupted conversation that felt like it had always existed. I walked her to her car that night, asked if I could see her again, and she said yes without hesitation. We dated for 3 years before getting married. No long-distance drama, no on-again, off-again cycles. Just steady, real commitment. We grew up in the same city but had never crossed paths before that night. I was working in IT support for a mid-sized logistics firm, and she had just started a job as an interior designer at a boutique studio downtown. We built our life one weekend at a time, lazy Sundays, rented movies, breakfasts at diners that opened before the sun came up. Our wedding was modest but warm. 60 guests, a late afternoon ceremony, and a reception in the backyard of Caroline's childhood home. Her father had strung up lights in the trees, and her mother made the dessert table from scratch. We danced under the stars and didn't leave for our honeymoon until 2 days later. Mexico. 10 days. No phones, no schedules. Just us. The first few years of marriage were smooth. We shared a one-bedroom apartment near the river and made do with hand-me-down furniture and second-hand appliances. Caroline made the place feel like a home with minimal effort. I'd come home from work and find new curtains, a new rug, some plant I didn't know the name of perched near the window. She didn't need much to make things beautiful. When I got promoted to systems analyst in my 3rd year at the company, we moved into a townhouse in a quieter part of the city. Caroline's business was picking up, too. She'd gone freelance and already had a solid client base. Our schedules didn't always line up, but we made time. Dinner together at least 4 nights a week, even if it meant takeout. We had routines. Shared playlists. An unspoken rule to always kiss goodbye, no matter how late we were running. We started talking about kids in our 5th year. Not planning, just talking. She wasn't in a rush. Neither was I. There was still so much we wanted to do, places to travel, projects to complete. It felt good to have time. Everything about our life felt earned. No shortcuts. No big windfalls. Just 2 people who liked each other enough to keep choosing each other, day after day. We settled into a rhythm after moving into the townhouse. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. 2 bedrooms, a small yard, and just enough space to feel like we'd finally stepped into the next chapter. Caroline threw herself into work, transforming spaces all over the city, condos, offices, restaurants. She had an eye for detail that made her stand out. Her business grew mostly by word of mouth. Clients loved her, said she listened better than anyone else in the industry. Meanwhile, I kept climbing the ladder at my company. After 5 years, I had moved from systems analyst to project lead. I was managing a small team and had finally started attending some of the higher-level meetings with the executives. That came with more hours and more pressure, but I didn't mind. It felt like progress. Like all those nights staying late and learning new systems were finally paying off. My direct supervisor, Marcus, the regional director, was one of those people who could be intimidating without raising his voice. Sharp suits, sharp eyes. Always watching. I didn't deal with him much then. Just enough to feel like I was on the radar. Caroline and I made time for each other the way people with goals do. We scheduled dinners, weekend trips, little traditions that tethered us to something familiar. Friday nights became our unofficial, no-work talk evenings. We'd open a bottle of wine, cook something together, usually her leading and me pretending not to get in the way, and watch movies we both pretended we hadn't seen a dozen times. I handled the dishes. She always tried to sneak in behind me with a towel to help, but I'd nudge her away and tell her that cleanup was my domain. Vacations became part of our annual rhythm. We didn't go far, long weekends to wine country, rented cabins in the woods, coastal cities just far enough away to feel like an escape. Caroline would always find the perfect place to stay, tucked away but beautiful, and she made sure we disconnected when we got there. Phones on silent. No laptops. Just the two of us and some quiet. We started talking about buying a house, something more permanent. We went to a few open houses on weekends, always with coffee in hand, pointing out the flaws and daydreaming about what we'd change. It wasn't serious yet, but we were getting closer. Saving more. Planning in small steps. Our social life remained full. Friends, small dinner parties, birthday gatherings. Caroline had a way of making everyone feel welcome. She was the one who remembered birthdays, who sent thank you notes, who showed up when someone needed help moving or a late-night phone call. Everyone liked her. It wasn't hard to see why. I worked more. That part was true. As I took on bigger projects, I started seeing more of upper management. Meetings with the directors became part of my schedule, and I'd occasionally stay late at the office to finish reports or prep for presentations. Caroline didn't mind. She said she understood. She had her own deadlines, her own clients, and we both respected the hustle. We weren't flashy, but we were proud. We worked hard. We made plans. We didn't skip over the details. Everything we had, we built one piece at a time. We bought our first house in the spring after our 7th anniversary. It was a 2-story craftsman in a quiet neighborhood just far enough from the city to feel like a retreat but still close enough for morning commutes. The yard was modest, shaded by 2 old oaks that dropped leaves like confetti every fall. Caroline fell in love with it before we even walked through the front door. She said the windows breathed well, whatever that meant. I just knew she already saw the future in that space. We moved in early May. It took us a week to unpack and maybe 3 months to fully settle in. Caroline took over the interiors like she'd been waiting for this moment all her life. Paint samples covered the walls for days. Every weekend we were at furniture showrooms or estate sales, arguing about chairs and light fixtures, always landing on something we both liked. I handled the garage, the tools, the yard, my kingdom, as she liked to joke. My role at work kept evolving. I was managing larger accounts and started attending regional conferences, meeting with clients face-to-face more often. Marcus, the regional director, began to take a more direct interest in my work. He invited me to internal leadership sessions, dropped in on team meetings, asked for input during presentations. At first, it caught me off guard, but over time I got used to the rhythm of it. He had a presence about him, measured, always composed. Some found it intimidating. I kept my head down and delivered. Caroline was busier, too. Her design business had grown beyond residential work. She had landed a few commercial clients and was now managing projects with full teams under her. We started seeing less of each other during the week, but the weekends remained ours. Sundays were sacred, pancakes, coffee, slow mornings in robes, music playing low in the background. We didn't need to talk much on those days. The silence between us had always been comfortable. We hosted our first party in the new house that fall. A small gathering, just close friends and a few neighbors. Caroline handled everything, the menu, the decor, even the lighting. She had this way of making spaces feel effortless, like they'd always been meant for laughter and people. Everyone stayed late. I remember looking around the room near midnight and thinking, we made this. We were in sync. Our calendars were color-coded. Our budgets were balanced. We didn't have to try to impress each other anymore. There was a natural ease to the way we operated. She handled the home front with grace. I took care of the back end, bills, insurance, savings. We had systems. We had trust. Caroline started working out more regularly, too. Joined a new gym near her office, started eating cleaner, trying out different routines. She looked good. Not that she ever didn't. I chalked it up to her just being more conscious of her health with how hectic her schedule was getting. I encouraged it. We both believed in taking care of what we built, our home, our work, our bodies. It felt like we had arrived. We weren't dreaming anymore, we were living it. Side by side. The house settled into us just as we settled into it. Every corner had a memory attached by the end of the first year. Caroline's design touch made it more than just beautiful, it felt intentional. Our home became the go-to gathering place for our friends. It wasn't about showing off, people just liked being there. The layout was open, the food was always good, and Caroline had a way of making guests feel like they'd known each other for years, even if they'd just met. Work for me kept ramping up. I was now leading multiple departments, coordinating across teams, and handling large clients with multi-year contracts. With that came longer hours and more responsibility, but also more recognition. Marcus, now more directly involved in the executive direction of the company, often cited my name during meetings. He introduced me to stakeholders as a key part of our future. Those moments mattered. They reminded me why I'd put in the years I had. It felt like I was finally at the table I'd spent a decade trying to reach. Caroline, meanwhile, was invited to speak at a regional design conference. She gave a talk on sustainable materials and modern aesthetics. I went with her, sat in the second row, and watched her hold the attention of 100 people without missing a beat. Afterward, strangers came up just to tell her how articulate and smart she was. I stood by, proud, nodding, holding her bag while she shook hands. She started collaborating with larger firms, picking up more ambitious projects. Her name appeared in a few industry newsletters, and she got her first magazine feature, a small piece, but beautifully done. She kept the article in a frame near her desk, said it reminded her how far she'd come. I was the one who had encouraged her to go solo in the first place, back when it seemed risky. She told me once, while we were sitting on the back steps drinking wine, that it was still the best decision she'd ever made. We didn't travel as much that year, mostly due to our schedules, but we made time when it counted. An anniversary weekend in Asheville. A last-minute beach trip when we both had a rare 3-day break. We talked about going to Europe in the next year, Spain, maybe Italy. Caroline had a folder on her computer filled with bookmarked villas and tucked-away cafes. I still made it a point to be home for dinner when I could. Caroline didn't expect it, but she always smiled when I did. We shared updates over meals like we always had. She'd tell me about difficult clients or a great tile find, and I'd talk about managing egos in the boardroom, tricky deliverables, or Marcus' latest efficiency push. She didn't always follow the technical details, but she listened. We were busy. Not distracted, just building. It was a full life. The kind where you end the day tired, but in a good way. The kind where you fall asleep next to someone who knows every part of your story and still laughs at your dumb jokes. We had made it. No more proving. Just living. It started with little things. Not dramatic, not sudden, just changes I couldn't quite place. Caroline became more distracted, more in her own world. We'd sit at the table over dinner, and her eyes would flick to her phone more than usual. She didn't smile as easily during conversations. Not cold, not distant, just somewhere else. She said it was work. A new client had expanded the scope of their project last minute, and she had to reshuffle her entire schedule to keep up. I believed her. It wasn't unusual for her to get absorbed when something big landed on her desk. She was meticulous when it came to timelines. That wasn't new. What was new was how often she seemed unreachable. Calls went to voicemail more often. Text replies came hours later, sometimes half-finished, like she'd started to respond and then forgotten. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and said she was just exhausted. I didn't press her. We'd both gone through cycles like that. I figured it would pass. She stopped coming to the gym with me in the mornings. Said she preferred working out in the evenings now, helped her decompress after long client meetings. She started going to a new place, one of those high-end fitness studios near downtown. She said it was closer to her office. I didn't think much of it. If anything, I was glad she was finding time for herself amid the chaos. Her phone became more private. She used to leave it lying around without a second thought, on the kitchen counter, the nightstand, the bathroom sink. Now it was always face down, always within reach. I chalked it up to client confidentiality. She was dealing with bigger budgets now, tighter NDAs. It made sense. Our evenings felt different. We still ate together, but there was a new silence between us. Not angry, just flat. I'd talk about my day, and she'd nod politely, occasionally offer a brief response, then retreat to her laptop before the credits even rolled on whatever show we were trying to keep up with. When I asked if she wanted to go away for a weekend, just the two of us, she said she couldn't. Too much going on. She began staying out later. Not late enough to raise alarms, just enough to notice. A few nights a week, she'd text around 6 to say she needed to run an errand or drop by a vendor. She always came home with something, a swatch book, a sample tile, a bag from the hardware store. There was nothing to question. And I didn't. One night, she came home quiet and went straight to the shower without saying much. I asked how her day had gone. She said it was fine, but her voice was tired. Not physically, emotionally. I told her to take a few days off if she could. She nodded and said, maybe. We still kissed goodnight. Still said, I love you. But it felt like a routine. A soft repetition of something we both remembered we were supposed to say. I figured she just needed space. She was carrying a lot, juggling too much. I'd seen it before. The best thing to do was support her without smothering. Let her come back on her own time. So I did. By mid-January, Caroline's routine had shifted so completely it was hard to remember how things had been just a few months before. She wasn't home for dinner most nights anymore. She said client demands had spiked after the holidays, New Year, new projects, that kind of thing. I'd come home to cold leftovers in the fridge and a note on the counter scribbled in rushed handwriting. Late night, don't wait up. Love you. She always wrote that last part. Love you. Like a signature. I'd eat alone, clean up, maybe watch something forgettable on TV, and head to bed by myself. She'd slip in sometime after midnight, usually after I'd already dozed off. Sometimes I'd wake briefly, hear the soft click of the bathroom light, the water running. Her side of the bed always felt cold before she slid in. On weekends, she was harder to pin down. Errands, meetings, last-minute design crises, there was always something pulling her out the door. When I asked if she wanted to have friends over or go out, she'd hesitate before offering some vague answer. Maybe next week, she'd say, or, I'm just trying to get through this phase. I understood. At least, I thought I did. We'd both been through periods of imbalance before, times when one of us carried more weight so the other could push forward. That was part of what made it work, we didn't keep score. She started dressing differently, too. Subtly, but noticeable. More heels, more tailored jackets, a little more effort even on days she said she was just visiting vendors or staging mock-ups. Her makeup got sharper, more defined. She carried herself like someone walking into an interview or a boardroom, even when she said she was heading to a simple client consult. I said she looked good. She smiled, said, thanks, but didn't linger. The biggest change was how little she shared. Caroline had always been a talker. She'd fill a whole dinner recounting a single meeting, laughing at her own frustrations, venting about indecisive clients. Now, when I asked about her day, I'd get one-word answers. Busy. Long, fine. Then she'd change the subject or disappear into the office upstairs, saying she had emails to finish. We still slept in the same bed, but it felt more like a formality. She turned in facing the wall most nights, and if I reached for her, sometimes she'd stir and murmur, "I'm so tired," before drifting off again. I believed her. She looked tired. But not in the way that came from physical work, more like her mind was elsewhere, somewhere I couldn't quite follow. There was no fight, no rupture. Just distance. Quiet, polite, persistent. Like a fog that thickened a little more each day. I thought about suggesting a trip again. Just the two of us. I even looked up flights one evening while she was out. But when I brought it up later, she barely reacted. Said she couldn't commit to anything right now, not until things settled down. Maybe in the spring, she said. I nodded. It felt like waiting for a season that might never come. But I told myself it would. Eventually. February passed in a blur of unanswered questions I never voiced out loud. By then, Caroline and I were more like roommates sharing the same address than partners sharing a life. The mornings were especially strange. She used to linger, stretch across the kitchen counter while sipping her coffee, teasing me about the news I always read aloud like it was a performance. Now she moved like she was on a time track. Wake up, shower, dress, out the door. No pauses. No coffee at home anymore, she said she preferred to grab it on the way. I adjusted, like people do. You learn to talk to yourself in silence, to fill empty rooms with sound that doesn't need a response. I started waking earlier, just to sit outside with a mug and watch the street wake up. There was something peaceful about those minutes. A kind of calm that helped soften the unease I didn't know what to name yet. Caroline started traveling more for work. Short trips, overnight stays, maybe 2 days at most. She told me it was part of expanding her reach, building out her portfolio with out-of-town clients. I believed her. She always left with a detailed schedule, a few names of contacts, addresses. She texted me updates, sent the occasional picture of a hotel lobby or an impressive foyer she'd helped design. I replied with encouragement, told her I was proud of her. But something about those updates felt distant. Like postcards from someone halfway through letting go. She changed her scent. I didn't ask why. One day the bottle on her dresser was different, something new, sharper, more expensive. I said it smelled nice. She nodded but didn't explain. Even her taste in music shifted. I noticed it when we drove somewhere together, which happened less and less. The playlists she used to sing along to were replaced by ambient instrumentals or podcasts about business psychology. She kept her earbuds in more often, even around the house. We hadn't been intimate in weeks, maybe longer. It wasn't a dramatic stop, just a slow fade. I'd reach for her, she'd smile faintly, say she was tired, maybe kiss my shoulder, then roll away. I didn't take it personally. Stress, schedules, travel, it was easy to believe that was all it was. Then came the nights she didn't come home until late, after midnight. Client dinner ran long, she'd say, or I had to go over final specs at the site. Sometimes she'd text to let me know, sometimes not. I never got angry. That wasn't our dynamic. We trusted each other. That was the foundation of everything we'd built. But I started noticing patterns. She'd be in a good mood the next morning, light, relaxed. Almost giddy. Like she'd been somewhere she didn't have to keep pretending to be tired. It didn't make sense, but I had nothing concrete to question. Just scattered pieces that didn't seem to fit together anymore. One night, I heard her laughing on the phone in the hallway. A low, warm laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. When I stepped into view, she ended the call quickly and smiled. Just a vendor, she said. I nodded. I wanted to believe it. So I did. It was the company's annual gala, an end-of-quarter celebration that had grown over the years from a simple dinner to a full-blown, catered affair held at a sleek hotel ballroom downtown. Partners were invited. Spouses, too. It was one of the few events where everyone let their guard down. Laughter came easier when drinks flowed and suits were traded for something a little shinier. I asked Caroline to come with me weeks in advance. She said yes at first, even seemed mildly excited about it. But 2 nights before, she claimed she was feeling run down. "I think I'm coming down with something," she told me, rubbing her temples. "I should rest. You go without me." I offered to stay home instead, but she insisted. "You've worked hard. You deserve to enjoy it. Besides, it's not like anyone's going to miss me." She smiled when she said it, but it didn't reach her eyes. So I went alone. The ballroom was already buzzing when I arrived. Round tables with folded name cards, waiters weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. A DJ played quiet jazz in the background while coworkers and their partners mingled and caught up. I moved between conversations easily, smiling, nodding, shaking hands. People asked where Caroline was. I repeated the story: flu, maybe a cold, resting at home. Everyone nodded sympathetically and went on. About an hour in, I stepped away to get some air and looped around the side entrance near the coat check. That's when I saw them. Caroline. And Marcus. My boss. They were standing just beyond the glass doors on the patio, lit by amber outdoor sconces. Caroline was laughing. Not politely. Not nervously. Laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her hand was resting lightly on Marcus's chest. His arm was around her waist like it belonged there. My body moved before my mind did. I stepped outside and the sound of the crowd fell behind me like a dropped curtain. They didn't see me at first. Not until I was right in front of them. Marcus turned. His smile faltered. Caroline froze. Her hand dropped. She took half a step back. "What the hell is this?" I said. She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at me, caught but not ashamed. Then she spoke. "I didn't want to do this here," she said. My heart thudded in my chest. "You said you were sick." She shrugged. "I didn't think you'd understand." I turned to Marcus. "You're my boss." He didn't flinch. His expression was steady. Arrogant. "She deserves better," he said calmly. "Someone with ambition. Someone who doesn't just take orders." Caroline's eyes stayed locked on mine. "I don't want a quiet life, not anymore," she said. "You're a good man, but you're small. Safe. I need more than that." Every word landed like a slap. I didn't speak. Not yet. I just looked at them, standing there like they hadn't torn something sacred in two. I turned and walked back inside. And in that moment, the only thing louder than the music was the sound of something snapping clean inside my chest. I walked back into that ballroom with every nerve in my body sparking. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. The betrayal hadn't even begun to settle, and already something else had taken over. Not grief. Not shock. Fire. I crossed the floor and stepped directly onto the stage where the microphone stood, still warm from the last speaker's closing remarks. A few people turned as I approached, their conversations dimming as they realized I wasn't part of the scheduled program. I tapped the mic once. The feedback caught everyone's attention. The room quieted. "Sorry to interrupt," I began, my voice louder than I expected. "I won't take long." Heads turned. I could see my coworkers. Some looked amused. Others curious. Marcus was still outside. Caroline too. I hoped they could hear me. "I've worked at this company for almost 10 years, I said. Built projects from the ground up. Stayed late, came in early, made sure this place ran when other people were home with their families. There were nods in the crowd. They knew. They'd seen me. I want to thank everyone here who's had my back. My team. My peers. The ones who work hard without cutting corners. The ones who do it the right way. A ripple of agreement passed through the room. I paused, looked directly at the center table where the partners sat. But tonight I found out something. Something I think all of you deserve to know. A hush fell over the room. Our esteemed regional director, Marcus Warren, I said, my voice tightening, has been sleeping with my wife. A gasp. A few audible murmurs. People turned in their chairs, scanning the room. While I was working late to keep this company running, he was taking her out. While I was managing projects under pressure, he was in my home behind my back. The silence now was total. And if that's who's leading this company, if that's the kind of man you're answering to, then maybe we all need to think about what this place really stands for. I stepped back from the mic. Someone clapped. Then another. Then a wave of applause that wasn't joyous, but angry, solidarity in sound. Marcus stepped back into the room then, Caroline trailing behind him. His face was pale but hard. He tried to raise his voice over the noise. All right, that's enough. But no one was listening. People were standing. Dozens of them. Some started shouting questions. Others shook their heads. The mood shifted fast, respect curdled into disgust. I saw coworkers walking out. People tearing off their lanyards. One of the department heads stood up and said, "You can expect my resignation tomorrow." Another followed. Mine too. Within minutes, the exodus began. Marcus stood stiff, jaw tight. Caroline looked like she didn't know where to hide. And me, I just walked out the front door and into the night. I didn't need to say another word. They'd all heard enough. By the next morning, the company was in free fall. I woke up to dozens of texts. Coworkers. Clients. Even a few board members. Screenshots of resignation emails, LinkedIn updates announcing departures, group messages exploding with disbelief and fury. One particularly scathing message had been written by a mid-level manager: "If leadership doesn't hold itself accountable, then it has no right to expect it from us." By noon, Marcus had been placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. HR tried to contain the fire, but it was already too late. The story had spread beyond the office walls: vendors, partners, investors. Reputation in business moves at the speed of silence breaking. And silence had shattered. Caroline called me that day. I didn't answer. She showed up at the house 2 days later, suitcase in hand, face swollen from crying. She rang the doorbell 3 times before I opened it. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. I looked at her, this woman I'd once imagined growing old with, and felt nothing but a wall of cold. "You made your choice," I said. She started crying again. "He told me we'd leave everything behind, start fresh. Now he's gone. He said I ruined his life." I let her speak. I didn't stop her. But I didn't comfort her either. "You didn't just ruin his life," I said. "You burned your own." She begged. She tried to get inside. I told her to stay somewhere else. A hotel. A friend's couch. I didn't care where. She had removed herself from this home the second she let another man think it was his. That evening, I got a message I hadn't expected, from Marcus's wife, Lauren. It was brief. Just a single line: "I'd like to talk. I think we've both been lied to." We met the next day. Neutral ground, a quiet cafe neither of us had ever been to. She was calm, elegant, but I could see the storm behind her eyes. He said it meant nothing, she told me. But men like him always say that. We talked for an hour. Not about our spouses, not really. About ourselves. About the wreckage. About rebuilding. There was a strange comfort in speaking with someone whose world had cracked along the same fault line. After that, we saw each other again. Then again. It wasn't romantic, not at first. It was healing. A shared quiet. A space to exist without the pretense of being okay when you weren't. Caroline tried reaching out several more times. I never responded. She sent letters, emails, even showed up outside my office once. I ignored every attempt. She no longer held the right to my time, my space, or my forgiveness. The house felt lighter without her. I repainted the walls. Changed the locks. Sold the couch. Every piece of the past that carried her imprint, I stripped it away. Not in anger. In clarity. She had gambled everything on someone who didn't value her, and in doing so, she discarded the life we built. I wasn't going to be the safety net she came crawling back to. I had nothing to offer her anymore. Only peace. And I intended to keep it. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected, but not empty. The house no longer echoed. It breathed. I moved through the rooms without second-guessing what I might find. The silence wasn't something I dreaded anymore. It was something I earned. Caroline eventually stopped reaching out. Whether she moved on or finally realized there was nothing left, I don't know. I didn't ask. Her presence faded from my life like a scent that lingers for a while before finally vanishing. Whatever she had with Marcus had clearly dissolved the moment the company collapsed around him. Last I heard, he had left the city entirely. No farewell emails. No statements. Just gone. The company itself folded within a month. With half the staff gone, investor confidence plummeted. Major clients pulled their contracts. Without Marcus at the helm, and with no trust left among the ranks, the entire structure unraveled like an old suit coming apart at the seams. It wasn't revenge I had planned. But it was justice all the same. Lauren and I stayed in touch. What began as shared grief evolved into something steady. Familiar. Honest. She knew how betrayal cuts, how it rewrites every moment that came before it. With her, there was no pressure to pretend I was okay when I wasn't. We talked. Often. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes in silence. She understood things without me needing to explain them. It wasn't long before those meetings turned into dinners. Then into weekends. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fast. But it was real. One morning, almost 6 months after everything fell apart, I woke up in her apartment to the smell of coffee and the sound of soft music playing from the kitchen. She was humming under her breath, barefoot in a robe, pouring cream into 2 mugs. It was the kind of simple, unremarkable moment I hadn't realized I missed. She looked over at me and smiled. "You always wake up so serious," she said. "Only when I'm this content," I replied. We both laughed. It was easy. Eventually, we talked about what it meant, where we were heading, what we wanted. Neither of us rushed it. But there was something undeniable about the way we fit into each other's lives, not as replacements for what we lost, but as the result of who we'd become because of it. As for Caroline, I don't hate her. Not anymore. I don't forgive her either, not in the way she probably hoped. But I've accepted what happened. What she did. Who she really was beneath the life we built. She taught me something, in a way. That love without respect is just a performance. That trust can be shattered not just by betrayal, but by silence, by absence, by the slow erosion of honesty. But what I found on the other side of all that, that's mine. The peace. The clarity. The quiet kind of joy that doesn't need a stage. Lauren and I still talk about that night sometimes, the gala, the patio, the moment everything turned. And every time, we end up in the same place, we lost what we thought we wanted. And we found what we actually needed.